David, I just made a short introduction. I don't know if you got it all, but could you tell us a little about what 37 Signals is? Because I think there's some people here knowing it and other people.
Sure. Yep. Absolutely. So we're a small software company. It was started back in 1999, actually, as a web design shop. In 2004, we released our first software product. It's a project management collaboration tool called Basecamp. It's all web-based software. You pay a monthly subscription to use the system, and then you can collaborate with people in your company and vendors and so on. And over the past 10 years or so, we've grown very slowly. Unlike a lot of other companies in our industry, we try to keep everything as small as possible. We have no intentions of sort of blowing it up big and becoming hundreds of people at the company, or taking VC capital, or selling the company. We are very much in this for the long term. We believe in sort of the boring old business principles of making more money than you spent. And we're just happy being a small, profitable software company where people love to work. The proudest excuse we have at our company is for how long people choose to stay with us. The vast majority, when we've ever hired, is still employed with the company. And neither Jason or I have any intention of making another one.
Okay, there's a slight problem with the sound here. I don't know, we haven't got the large connection, but we're not going to switch a connection, no? No. Okay, David, I hope we can go through this. It's always a mess going live on Skype on these connections, but you wrote a book, co-authored a book with Jason Fried called Rework. I read it last year on Bornholm, actually, in a small summer house there, and I thought, well, these guys reminds me of some of these young kids I'm working with at WeMind, Jakob Bøtter and these guys, really full of so many ideas and stuff. Essentially, what I wrote in the book is, how do you create the customer-centric organization? That's very much many of your points. How do you boil out or boil in the focus on customer experience? Give us a little word about how important that is for you and how you make it happen in 37 Signals.
Sure. So we kind of approach this perhaps a little backwards for people. I think there's a lot of focus on listen to the customer. The customer is always right. If you just get something out there of whatever quality, the customers will tell you what you have to do to make it right. I, to put it frank, believe that that's a load of crap. I don't believe that you can just put something out there and then customers will design it for you. I think that that's absolutely overhyped social media bullshit. And I think you're going to end up in trouble if that's the path you take. So our customer-centric approach is look at ourselves as customers. So when we design a new product, it has to work primarily for us first. Because if it doesn't work for us, then we won't know whether it's good or bad or different. And we're just going to push something out there and that the customers are going to fix it for us? I don't think so. So the product, the pricing, the features, the design, everything we're trying to design for us. And the way that becomes customer-centric is because we don't believe we're special. We don't believe we're beautiful, unique snowflakes of consumerism. We believe that if we like the systems we're building, there's going to be thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people just like us who have exactly the same problems that we have. We're overloaded with email. We're dealing with interruptions all the time. So the solutions that we build, if they can make our daily work better, well, then they can make the daily work of other people better too. And I think that this is really one of those infectious memes that sounds good, that you can just push something out there and customers will be also willing to try it and end up with something good. And I think that sounds good. Like it sounds good. It sounds good to the builders. It sounds good for everybody. That this is just one big collaboration.
David, there's a slight problem with the sound. I think maybe it's when you're moving too close to the machine. Maybe I don't know. You can't go more back to the wall. We got you against the wall now. Try to stay in the back. I don't know if the sound is better there. Could you do it again?
I'll try.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, great. You got a couple of quite provocative points in your book. One is to unlearn your MBA, and that's one of your main points, and also the subtitle of your talk here today. So I obviously spent 300,000 doing the MBA, like many other leaders. So damn, we fucked up. Tell us why you're so angry about the MBA system, and why it's not important to be an MBA, and why it's important to unlearn what you learned at the MBA.
So I think most MBA programs are focused around the lessons of industrialization. They're focused around big companies, stable companies that have long histories that you can make projections from, and budgets and charts and all that stuff. All the tools that you generally pick up in MBA and business programs are focused around this stuff. Now, the problem arises if you try to take those tools and apply them to new companies. And that's really where it goes wrong. So when you have an MBA coming in, looking at an unknown market, an unknown product, unknown sets of customers, no history to learn from, and they try to apply the techniques of, oh, let's set up budgets for the next 24 months. Let's set up a growth projection plan for how the next 5 years are going to look. That is not only just not going to happen. Like, you don't have the data to make reasonable projections from that. So that's not only a waste of time, it's downright dangerous. I find that companies who go down that path of trying to predict the future end up with blinders on. They're not going to pick up on those opportunities that arise from all this unknown stuff that happens when you're building a new company. And this is particularly true when you have that unknown product. What you should be spending your time on is not making projections, it's making a damn good product. You shouldn't worry about how things look 5 years from now from a profit and loss standpoint. You should worry about being around in 2 months. If you can build something compelling that people are willing to buy and pay for, everything else is going to work out from there. You'll have all the time in the world about budget planning when you have an established company with 5% growth.
Okay, I'm going to switch. You're very good when you're up against the wall, so just stay there. We got you where we want you. I'm not going to ask you about the economics of 37 signals. We might touch on that later. But David, I read your book, and I loved it in many senses. I imagined it coming, and I know it came from 2 young entrepreneurs in a small organization. Another topic of yours, or one of your chapters in the book, is avoid the toxic meetings. I used to work in the Danish Broadcasting Corporation, so I know everything about toxic meetings. It's 9 to 5 toxic meetings with bad sandwiches and stuff. But tell me, 37 Signals is a small company. You want to stay small. Small is beautiful. But what do Maersk do with 105 or 120,000 people distributed all over the world? They got to make a couple of meetings. Or how is that?
Sure. Well, first of all, once you get to that size, you're basically screwed as far as productivity goes. There's not an easy solution. I don't think that humans were made to work in that big groups. So when you have to deal with 100,000 coworkers, things are just going to be fucked. There's no way around it. So the best you can do is sort of get the best out of it. And I think that if you look at big companies and what they do when they're really trying to get something done, when they absolutely need a new blockbuster product or something, what do? They form a small group. They form skunk works teams. They don't invite hundreds of people to start out in something. No, they pick 10 specialists, put them together off-site, which is what's so funny to me is that big organizations instinctually know that they're dysfunctional. Because whenever something needs to get done, they try to remove all the things that there are about a big organization, sort of remove that and get it out of there. But I think that there's also a lot of just sort of simple techniques that you can use to get around the toxic meeting. And a lot of that is just being focused on the work itself. At 37 Signals, we deal mostly with remote workers, which means that we can't bug them all the time to come into the meeting room, which is a good thing. I used to work from Copenhagen when we started 37 Signals. I didn't have the opportunity to just go into a meeting room with Jason. And guess what? We got more done when I was 7 time zones away in Copenhagen than when I moved to Chicago and started going to the office every day. That should just sort of tell you that the problem today in lots of organizations is not lack of collaboration. It's over-collaboration. It's the fact that people spend too much time together and not enough time on itself. So we've sort of proposed some ideas in the book. For example, what if you had a meeting Thursdays? I think people would realize that Thursday would be the day that shit got done. And that goes for sort of this approach in general. People know that meetings and over-collaboration is a problem because you have lots of people writing in saying, oh, I can only get something done in the morning, or I can get something done in the evening. I can't get anything done from 9 to 5 because I'm constantly in meetings, not getting stuff done. So this is us proposing any revolutionary idea. It's just saying, you know this doesn't work. Just take a concept and do something about it.
We need you against the wall still, but it's working fine. You're touching beautifully into what both Henrik Werdelin talked about spinning innovation outside your company, maybe spinning it back in at some point, and also what Jakob Bøtter has been running 2 sessions on, which is the networked organization. I wanted to touch a little bit more about the network organization because you're structured in network. You started as a network sitting in different places in the world. What are the downsides of that, except for all the focus on getting your job done and not sitting in toxic meetings? What are your challenges in a network organization?
Sure. I think that there's a couple of things. First of all, it doesn't work to be completely removed in terms of synchronous collaboration. You need overlap. You need time when people are online at the same time. I think that is one of the main reasons why outsourcing didn't work. Why American companies just throwing stuff to India and China had such poor results. Because when you have a feedback loop that is one email and then a lag of 1 day before you get a response, that's broken. It doesn't work. So when I was working from Copenhagen, we made sure that I just shifted my day. I started working later in the day, and we made sure we had 3 or 4 hours of overlap. That is absolutely critical. You need that sort of live interaction. Whether that live interaction is just IM or chat or the occasional phone call or something like that. But even when you do that, there's absolutely still a challenge of sort of the social cohesion of an organization. It is important to see people occasionally. We absolutely find that if you go too long without seeing each other face to face, something is missing, something's not right. But what we've tried to do is to focus our meetups on that. Realize the fact that humans need to see each other every now and then for good connections to exist. So 3 times a year, we bring everybody in for a week at the company, and then we focus our time specifically just on that. That the main purpose that week is just to recharge our social connections. And then we can go back to just getting stuff done the other 49 weeks of the year.
A lot of the big companies also working in network organizations. I know Novozymes is working with off-site research and development in many countries, also in Asia. There's the language barrier as well, and the cultural barrier. How do you experience that when working with people? Well, you're from Copenhagen, you can work with the Americans. We got some of the same cultural heritage and stuff, and share a lot of stuff. But working with Indian people, working with Chinese people, are you doing that, or are you working with people in radically different cultures? And could you just touch on what your experience is?
We aren't. We really aren't. We have people in the US, we have people in Canada, we have a couple of people in the UK, and then I'm from Denmark. And I think that part of the reason I got attracted to 37 Signals was because that perhaps I shared more of the American approach to work than I shared the Danish approach to work. So I think that that is very hard. The cultural differences don't just go away because you want to work together. So we just routed around that problem. There's not a good single answer from us on that.
So bringing in the perspective for 37 Signals, I was touching about it. You're making money?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
We've been making money since day one. I don't believe in wasting my time, basically, running a company that doesn't make money. To me, that is sort of the validation of the market. That is telling me that I'm doing something that's valuable and that customers like it and that they're thus paying me for. And it also means that I run an efficient organization. If I spend more money than I make, then that's a misallocation of capital. I should come up with a better idea, be more productive, change something to make it profitable again. One of the key metrics that we look at is actually not absolute sort of profitability. It is more how profitable are we per employee. That is our metric of efficiency. I want that number to be infinitely high. I have no interest in doubling my revenues if it means that I have to hire 4 times as many people. That just isn't interesting. So maybe that's a personal fetish of me that I just really enjoy optimizing for efficiency. But I think it's also a general approach that we use to come up with better ideas. If you are not going to hire 50 programmers, what different kinds of decisions do you have to make to create a compelling product?
Yeah.
But for a very long time, we had just under 10 people. The initial product that we're still selling, and still the most profitable product that we have, was created 3 people working part-time.
Getting back to the idea behind many of your product lines, we got the Basecamp and all the, well, you got 4 products or 5 products in this collaboration panel of products. Collaboration is very much at the center of your tools, applied by millions of people around the world now. How do you experience, you're to many extents a first mover in this field, but while Google Wave flopped, so you can rest there. But what are your main competitors now? There's a lot of new innovation in this market, producing new tools. It's getting easier to get them produced and get them distributed. So who are your main competitors, and how are you looking a way ahead with 37 Signals?
Sure. Our main competitors, or main competitors since day one, and still to this day, is email. All collaboration usually refers to email. People try all sorts of different things, but there's one enduring application that has sort of allowed people to collaborate from different locations, so on, over time, and that's email. So we're not so worried about people coming out with something that's really fancy and has a lot more features than we have, and speeding that way. There's plenty of overcomplicated collaboration tools out there, and we don't find ourselves in competition with them very often. We find ourselves in competition with the simplest thing that could possibly work all the time. So we try to be just a step better than that. If we can be just a little bit better than email, then we're in a good spot. But that's not to say that we can come up with another fantastic idea of how you should collaborate on projects and make that work. We potentially could be in trouble. But this isn't a winner-take-all market. Very, very few markets are winner-take-all market. There's no inherent network effects to collaborate.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What one has very little what another organization uses.
Yeah, I'm sorry, David. You're morphing into a strange pixel dimension here, but well, it looked kind of scary. Now it looks kind of good again. Sorry for the connection here. Just getting back to big companies, we were talking about Maersk, who was pretty much fucked. So when you're looking at collaboration and people working together in big companies and the tools there, what are the challenge and what are the possibilities of adopting some of these tools in big organizations?
Sure. So I think the first thing, you can pretty much only win if you get less meetings. So anything that'll replace the need to have another meeting, you're going to win there automatically. So a lot of our tools, for example, makes it very easy to collaborate on to-do lists. What needs to get done? That's such a component in organizational collaborative meetings. It just so happens that sitting around a table talking about what needs to get done is not a very efficient process. It's sort of a slow way of getting there, and usually you involve a lot of people who have no particular interest in the topics as they're being discussed one by one. So in something like Basecamp, for example, we put up the to-do list of what we need to get done for our products, and then we just work together on that in an asynchronous manner. You don't all need to sit like 10 people around the same table hashing things out. Most things are just not that critical. Doesn't require that amount of consensus. So you can get a lot done if you start trusting people that they know what needs to get done, and we just need to have some idea of what everybody else is doing, and then we can sort of move on.
David,
same idea of global collaboration.
Okay, I'm going to have to cut you off for a short period here because you're preaching the customer-centric organization, and I'm standing here with an audience. I just have to ask, does this make sense? Is it okay to continue? Or should we kind of like wrap it up now? We're going to continue with the last question then.
Okay.
Does anyone in the audience have a question for David? I'm going to project it on. Yeah?
If he was forced to work for Mars, these days, what would you do besides split them up?
Oh, here's a challenge. You're now, David, assigned the CEO of Maersk with 120,000 people working all around the world. What would you do? Against the wall? Against the wall, so we can hear you?
Sure. I would trigger my golden parachute and start a new company. I don't believe that once you get to that size, it takes a different kind of person than the person who thrives in a small organization, which is exactly why we have no interest in growing to that size. I would never take that job upon me because that's just not a challenge I find interesting. What I find interesting is working with builders and being part of a team that actually builds something. Once you get beyond the maybe, 50, 75 people, you can't be a leader and a builder at the same time. Or at least very few people are able to do that. So you're being forced into being a manager full-time. And I know of no worse nightmare than being a full-time manager.
That point is made. There's time for another question from the audience. Is there someone who wants to ask David a question? There's one more from the same gentleman. Yeah.
Which company that is bigger does it actually acquire?
Oh, here's a question. What company of quite big size worldwide do you admire? Is there somebody doing particularly good? And Zappos, we already know you like. Or, well, they're doing a lot of the customer-centric organization. But give us a couple of examples of big companies that you think still succeed even though they reached a critical mass of people.
The company I always go back to is Apple. Apple is the only company I know of that enormous size, the most valuable company in the world, who is still able to put out the kinds of products that they are. They have such a clear, distinct vision and culture that hasn't been corrupted by the traditional sense of growth. And I think that goes back to the people who are running it are still builders. Steve Jobs, I think, cares a lot less about the general principles of management than he cares about nailing that the next iPad is the best fucking product in that category by a very far margin. He doesn't hold himself up to let's benchmark ourselves against the other competitors in this industry. He makes products that are awesome because they're awesome for him. He wants the best tablet, he wants the best iPod, he wants the best computers for him, for his personal satisfaction. And I find that that's just incredibly rare at that level of scale.
So out goes lefty, hippish, open-style management. In goes the dictator with the plan and the vision. Now, that's a great perspective because we're discussing a lot of openness and sharing and involvement. But what you're bringing to the party here, I think, is still, and many of the other speakers also have brought to the party, it's people that innovate. It's people that drive through innovation. It's people that is so concerned about a problem and solving the problem that drives through innovation, sure. Is that not a question? Just a single question? Yes?
No, I just think it's sad and also a little boring that it's always happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
People are crazy different ones that happen.
Yeah.
What makes them really fast?
Yeah.
So I'd like to know, is it really, I mean, from this work also, that this is really no one
Yeah. Okay, David, here's a question, and there's a lot of discussion around Apple. Obviously, they've been doing fantastic the last many years. They're also criticized by many for Steve Jobs' leadership style with a very, an old-fashioned dictatorship and a very closed view on priority formats and stuff. Are there better examples than Apple, or are there other examples than Apple that you admire?
This is a good question. There's a book by Ricardo Semler called Maverick that describes his organization in, I think it's Brazil, where he has a very industrial company of 8,000 people make mechanical pumps. In many ways, opposite of the leadership style of Apple. It's much more sort of the open organization. You pick what you need to, what you want to work on. They even let their employees pick their own salaries. And I really admire that they're able to push through incredibly radical management ideas at such an old, stodgy company. You don't expect that a company of mechanical pumps is going to be exactly innovating on leadership styles. But I think that the point from Apple is not necessarily replicate Steve Jobs. I don't run 37 Signals and the people I deal with at the company like he would run them. I recognize that his leadership style is very particularly unique to him, but it's very at least authentic. He is being who he is and sort of chasing his own personal goals. And I wish that there was more of that. It doesn't need that you have to copy his approach to leadership, but it has to be that you have to copy his passion, and you have to copy his intent of making it just awesome, because awesomeness itself is rewarding. Not because you're trying to figure out over the competition or how can we gain another 0.5% of market share here and there. I mean, once you get down into that level,
we need you against the wall. We're losing the sound. Back against the wall. Yeah. Yeah, that's much better. Now you look like a dictator in your chair there. No, David, I'm just going to wrap this session up because the sound has been, a little bit crappy here. You got to tell us, where are you located? Are you in a toilet or are you in an office building? What is that bag behind you?
I'm actually in a dedicated podcast room that we have at the office.
Could you tilt the camera? Could you tilt the machine? Yeah, just show us around. Live from Chicago. There's a super exciting room in the company of the 21st century. So it's not always the physical buildings that are shaping the 21st century company. David, I want to thank you for being with us here, and bear with us that the connection was still a little bit messy, so we had to go on a mobile one. I want to thank you for being with us. It was great. Thanks. Give David a hand.
Sure. Thank you.